The guests to Epstein's island came from across the world and from the highest ranks of society, celebrities, scientists, and members of royal families, touching down in private jets and then boarding a helicopter to the island. Its owner liked to call it Little St. Jeff. But what is the truth about Little St. James, the 75-acre private paradise in the US Virgin Islands that billionaire Jeffrey Epstein once called home? A criminal complaint from the Attorney General of the US Virgin Islands described it as the perfect hideaway and haven for trafficking young women and underage girls for ungodly acts. On the island, the complaint says Epstein and his associates could avoid detection of their illegal activity from Virgin Islands and federal law enforcement and prevent these young women and underage girls from living freely and escaping their abuse. The island featured in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial in December. She was convicted and sentenced to 20 years behind bars plus a $750,000 fine on Tuesday, the 28th of June 2022. Finally, in May 2023, it was sold to a wealthy investor for less than half of its original asking price with the hope of turning it into a luxury resort. Here is everything you should know about Little St. James and what Epstein did on the island. Now, Little St. James is a small island fringed by coral reefs in the bright blue waters of the US Virgin Islands, with sheltered inlets and forest grooves rising to a dramatic windswept ridges and craggy cliffs. It lies just off the southeastern tip of St. Thomas, one of the Caribbean archipelago's 3 main islands. The Virgins were purchased from Denmark by the US government at the height of the First World War in order to stop them from being used as a German submarine base. Today, many financial experts regard them as a tax haven, with huge discounts on corporate tax and personal income tax available to companies based there. It was in the Virgins that Epstein based his shell companies in a small unmarked office in a seaside strip mall on St. Thomas, alongside Sam's Minimart and a salon called Happy Nails. In 1998, he bought Little St. James from venture capitalist Acumen via a shell company reported paying just under $8 million. The new owner quickly scoured away all the native vegetation and replaced it with 40-foot palm trees. Starting in 2007, Epstein began a massive program of building and remodeling that drew suspicion from local officials. His main compound nearly doubled in size, sprouting into a plush mansion with an outside terrace connecting the master bedroom and the swimming pool, along with a desalination system. Satellite photos show a sprawling network of terraces, cottages, beach houses, swimming pools, docks, utility buildings, a helipad, a tennis court, sleepways, some kind of enclosed lake or lagoon, and various hats of unknown purpose, all connected by palm-lined roads where golf buggies ferried guests from place to place. Typically, a journey across the island reportedly took about 5 minutes. Stunning drone footage posted on YouTube offers a closer look, with a huge sundial at the center of the island big enough to walk around on, and 2 tall American flags posted at opposite ends of the island. At the other end of Epstein's manor is a squat, boxy blue and white strip structure often referred to as a temple, surrounded by a terrace with a red labyrinth motif. It previously had a golden dome and 2 gold statues on its roof, which were reportedly torn off in Hurricane Maria. The building differs greatly from Epstein's original planning permit for an octagonal music pavilion and has become a lightning rod for favored speculation. Theorists have variously described it as an entrance to an underground lair, an altar to an Egyptian deity, a burial ground for his parents, but an investigation by local authorities concluded that it was most likely a private study and music room for Epstein. In 2016, Epstein also bought the neighboring island of Great St. James, about twice as large at 165 acres, allegedly pretending that the real buyer was a Dubai businessman named Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. Residents reported that he wasn't well received, as people thought he was too rich to be policed properly. In the days before his 2008 conviction, Epstein will visit Little St. James 2 or 3 times a month, staying several days at a time. One former employee described it as a zen-like retreat where the financier will stroll around in flip-flops with meditative music playing from speakers and women often sunbathing topless. There were always women, of course, frequently attractive, sometimes suspiciously young, on the arms of Epstein or one of his many guests, or sometimes ferried over in groups aboard a 38-foot boat called the Lady Ghislaine, plane, reportedly after Epstein's longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell. The island had a staff of about 70, from groundskeepers and gardeners, through laundry ladies to on-call boat captains. They wore black and white polo shirts and were sworn to strict secrecy, with instructions to stay out of Epstein's sight when doing their work. They were also forbidden to enter either of Epstein's 2 offices in the main manor, one of which housed a closely guarded steel safe. According to the LA Times, Epstein also had an enthusiasm for pirate treasure, which was what he named old rum bottles and crockery found about the island. He will pay servants between $100 and $1,000 for interesting finds in good condition. Miles Alexander and his wife Kathy ran the island between 1999 and 2007, and during an interview by the Daily Mail, reported that Epstein was a kind man, and while they didn't approve of things he was accused of, they liked him very much. The South African couple described how Epstein did not like to eat meals in front of people, instead taking snacks to eat in his room, where he would also receive daily massages. Disturbing him there was absolutely forbidden, although they did once find a box of adult toys when he was out. When they were hired, the Alexanders said they were told that what Jeffrey wants is what Jeffrey gets. Of course, there were always guests on the island. Among the famous names reportedly hosted by Epstein were theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, Nobel laureate Lawrence Krauss, comedian Chris Tucker, actor Kevin Spacey, Victoria's Secret magnate Les Wexner, model Naomi Campbell, former Tony Blair aide Lord Peter Mandelson, Prince Andrew of the United Kingdom, and other unnamed former and current world leaders. It has been claimed that Bill Clinton was also a guest, though he denies ever having been there. Donald Trump reportedly flew on one of Epstein's private jets, but it is unclear if he visited the island. The magician David Copperfield is even said to have proposed to supermodel Claudia Schiffer while on the island. Guests would arrive on one of Epstein's Gulfstream jets at Cyril E. King Airport on St. Thomas in a private area separate from the main runway. They will then be shuttled to Little St. James on one of Epstein's black helicopters. Epstein was fond of treating the guests, reportedly paying for a submarine to be modified to give a seabed tour to Professor Hawking, who had never been underwater before. One former employee described it as like a 5-star hotel where nobody paid. Kathy Alexander remembers Prince Andrew as one of the more gracious visitors, describing him as great fun and very undemanding. One day he returned from the beach in great mirth as one of his companions had stepped on a sea urchin and he had urinated on her foot to try and salve it. Miss Alexander recalls him slipping her a $350 tip, which was unexpected because other guests didn't tip at all. In January 2024, over 200 Epstein associates were unmasked after a judge ordered the unsealing of court documents in a lawsuit brought by Virginia Giuffre against Ghislaine Maxwell. Many of the documents that were unsealed have previously been publicly released, though names were redacted. In December 2023, U.S. District Judge Loretta Preska ruled that there was no legal justification to keep the names redacted as John and Jane Doe's. This has paved the way for several famous figures to find their names publicly linked to Epstein, some of whom may be alleged visitors to the island. Now, you may be wondering why no one noticed Epstein's alleged crimes. Well, they certainly did. From the start, locals on St. Thomas whispered darkly about Epstein's activities, calling his private jets the Lolita Express. When scuba divers swam near the island, security guards will reportedly appear to patrol the edge of the water. At one point, Epstein was ferrying about 200 workers back and forth every day to build his projects. One of them told the media that when he was there, it was a matter of keep to yourself and do your thing, adding that sometimes Epstein will give away old material or surplus material. Airport staff on St. Thomas could definitely see who Epstein was bringing with him on the Express. A former air traffic controller from the airport even told the media that on multiple occasions, they saw Epstein exit his helicopter, stand on the tarmac in full view of their tower, and board his private jet with children. Female children. The former air traffic controller also added in their interview that my colleagues and I definitely talked about how we didn't understand how this guy was still allowed to be around children. We didn't say anything because we figured law enforcement was doing their job. That is regrettable, but we really didn't even know who to tell or if anyone really cared. Another airstrip employee said, and I quote, "There were girls that looked like they could be in high school. They looked very young. They were always wearing college sweatshirts. It seemed like camouflage. That's the best way to put it. I could see him with my own eyes. I could see his face. I called it the face of evil. It was like he was flaunting it. Sometimes the girls would be carrying shopping bags from designer brands such as Gucci and Dior." The Alexanders also grew suspicious. Kathy, who was running the island with her husband Alexander at the time, even told the media that they looked like they had stepped out of an underwear catalog. The girls walked around with very few clothes on or lounged around by the pool with nothing on. It was like that most of the time. She was definitely concerned about their ages, as a few of them looked very young, and she couldn't help but wonder if their mothers and fathers knew where they were. Miles Alexander, Kathy's husband, added that he sometimes had to refuse Epstein's requests to smuggle in female guests by boat without logging their names and passport numbers with the government of St. Thomas. The couple's unease grew until they finally quit in 2007. What really happened on Epstein's island is still the subject of multiple ongoing court cases, but the accusations are definitely shocking. According to a lawsuit filed by Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, Little St. James was the center of a worldwide grooming scheme in which recruiters working for Epstein targeted young women who were open to abuse and manipulation, played on their hopes and fears, dazzled them with displays of vast wealth and power, and then forced them to have intercourse with clients while keeping them in line with threats and blackmail. Ms. Giuffre says that Prince Andrew abused her sexually on Little St. James when she was just 17, which the prince unequivocally denies. Ms. Giuffre settled her lawsuit against Prince Andrew on 15th February 2022, bringing an end to the protracted legal case in New York court. To accomplish his legal ends, Epstein formed an association with multiple defendants and others, which include both companies and individuals who were willing to participate in, facilitate, and conceal Epstein's criminal activity in exchange for Epstein's bestowal of financial and other benefits. In fact, the complaint describes Little St. James as just one step in a worldwide web of private flights that ferried victims to London, Paris, Tangier, Granada, St. Louis, Palm Beach, Atlantic City, and beyond. It says some victims were as young as 12 years old. The complaint also alleges that Little St. James served as a prison for the victims, with Epstein controlling all communication with the outside world. It says that at one time, this 15-year-old tried to escape by swimming, but Epstein organized a search party, recaptured her, and confiscated her passport. I mean, you have to remember he owns a whole island, so it wasn't a situation where a child or young woman will be able to just break away and run down the street to the nearest police station. One alleged victim told CBS News that Epstein kept a computerized list of underage girls in or near the Virgin Islands who could be brought to the island at any time when he wished. Authorities made several attempts to investigate Little St. James. As a registered sex offender, Epstein was required to re-register every year, and officials did try to visit the island in 2018 to verify his address. But according to the Attorney General's complaint, Epstein refused the officers' entry at the dock, claiming it was his front door, and insisted on meeting them in his office on St. Thomas. He also made employees sign confidentiality agreements that banned them from talking to law enforcement and mandated them to report any inquiries to Epstein. In addition, both Little St. James and Great St. James are protected areas due to their coral reefs and wildlife. Local planning officials suspected Epstein of exceeding his building permits, and the Attorney General's complaints say that he was fined thousands of dollars for breaking environmental rules, yet that kind of money was nothing to Epstein. In fact, the complaint argues that Epstein's purchase of Great St. James was simply a ruse to hide what was happening on Little St. James. The Epstein enterprise purchased the island for more than just $20 million because participants wanted to ensure that it did not become a base from which others could view their activities or visitors. Epstein purchased these properties to further shield his conduct from view, prevent his detection by law enforcement or the public, and allow him to continue and conceal his criminal enterprise. In December of 2022, the US Virgin Islands filed a lawsuit in a federal court in New York against JP Morgan Chase, alleging the Wall Street Bank had been complicit in helping Epstein traffic vulnerable women and girls at his two secluded islands. The US Virgin Islands Attorney General alleged that JP Morgan helped pull the levers through which Epstein paid his network of enablers and victims. Epstein withdrew as much as $750,000 a year in cash from JP Morgan accounts even after he had been red flagged by the bank. JP Morgan rejected the allegations and tried to shift blame for Epstein's crimes onto high-ranking US Virgin Islands officials. JP Morgan's lawyers claimed that the US Virgin Islands shielded him from accountability while reaping the benefits of his wealth. The US Virgin Islands quietly began issuing subpoenas for the bank's top executives and other powerful peripheral figures who were dragged into the case. Among them were JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, Tesla CEO and Twitter owner Elon Musk, and Google's co-founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin. There is no suggestion, however, that that any of the men were involved in Epstein's criminal enterprise. When Mr. Dimon was quizzed under oath by US Virgin Islands attorneys in late May, he said he did not recall ever hearing about Epstein until after his arrest in 2019. Mr. Dimon, a Wall Street power player who has expressed an interest in running for president, said he first heard about Epstein when the story blew wide open. According to a transcript of the video deposition, Mr. Dimon was confronted with an email from Epstein's former assistant suggesting the pair was scheduled to meet as far back as 2010. He replied emphatically that he had never had an appointment, never met, or never knew Epstein. JP Morgan, through its lawyers, further claimed that Epstein had bankrolled a US Virgin Islands official's political campaign, who later awarded him tax breaks. Then in September, weeks before the case was due to go on trial, JP Morgan announced that it had settled the case for $75 million without admitting it was at fault. In a statement, the bank said it will pay $55 million to Virgin Island charities and anti-trafficking organizations and $20 million to cover the island territory's legal expenses.
Do you have any remorse for your actions against these victims?
Epstein ended his own life in prison in 2019. In June 2023, a scathing US government report laid bare a catalogue of errors leading to his demise, but confirmed the original assessment that he did end his own life. After that, for nearly 2 years, the fate of little St. James and Great St. James were in limbo after the government of US Virgin Islands asked a judge to give it control of Epstein's old assets. The billionaire's executor fought that request, saying that they want to use his assets to set up a relief fund for Epstein's victims, and asked the government to unfreeze his 2 islands so they could sell them off. Attorney General Dennis George countered the argument by accusing them of mismanaging the estate and paying for lawyers, landscaping, and helicopter fees, but not the brave women who have stepped forward to participate in the compensation fund. But in November 2022, the US Virgin Islands reached a settlement with the Epstein estate, which agreed to pay the government $105 million and half the proceeds from an eventual sale of the islands, plus $450,000 to repair environmental damage. Authorities say that Epstein had removed the ruins of all colonial structures from the days of slavery. With the path to a sale now clear, investor Stephen Dekoff announced on 3rd May 2023 that he will buy both islands for $60 million with the hope of opening a 25-room luxury resort by the end of 2025. That money was less than half of the $125 million asking price that was originally attached to the islands. In the meantime, Little St. James has become a hotspot for morbid tourists, urban explorers, and social media influencers attempting to access the island and make videos. Travelers frequently ask about it, and some local boat operators make it a part of their tours. So, what do you guys think? Comment down below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.